After Dark with Gary. We got Preston Dennett on talking about, well, UFOs in general, Area 51, and all kinds of cool stuff. We'll be back right after this.
Broadcasting building. I'm speaking from the roof of Broadcasting Building, New York City. The bells you hear are ringing to warn the people to evacuate the city as Martians approach. Estimated in the last 2 hours, 3 million people have moved out along the roads to the north. Hutchison River Parkway is still kept open for motor traffic. Void bridges to Long Island, hopelessly jammed. All communication with Jersey Shore closed 10 minutes ago.
You are listening to Night Dreams Talk Radio Network, from our compound to you worldwide, with your host, Gary Anderson.
Wow, we're talking to Preston Dennett tonight. James is on the line with us. And hey, Preston, hopefully you're still there.
I'm here.
Yeah, what do you want to talk about the last 28 minutes of the show?
I'd actually love to talk about my latest book, Schoolyard UFO Encounters, because you don't hear a lot about that. But before I do, I thought I'd just close out, a story on Area 51 that I contributed, to the Area 51 book by Tim Beckley, which was about this sort of whistleblower. I didn't get to talk to him directly. There was sort of a go-between with my father, who was friends with someone who knew this gentleman who worked at a secret base. And this wasn't at Area 51, but there is a connection. Because how it all went down is one day this guy, I'll call him John, said that everything about his life was a lie. He lied about his friend, to his wife, to his children. He lied to all his friends. He lied to everybody. He said he had this sort of mundane job in Nevada. But what he would do is he would go to a base there in Nevada, and they would fly him up to Alaska every week, and he would work up there in a secret underground base, which went, I believe it was several stories down, and they worked on 3 different areas of research.
Wow.
One was, very, very interesting story. One was biological weapons, and he said it's far in advance of what you think we have. and another was sensing devices, and he said specifically that they had devices that could look through solid objects. So you may think, closing the curtains works, but it doesn't. And third was aircraft that are powered by electromagnetism based on ET technology, and that a number of the objects seen in that area are probably ours. So yeah, we are neck deep in this subject.
Oh,
it's having a huge influence on our society in a number of different ways.
It's really scary when you really think about all this stuff that's going on, all these different places. It's going on from North Carolina to Alaska to Nevada. I will say one thing. I keep track of UFO sightings by state, and I look at it every day. It's at Maine and a few other states are the lowest count. Washington is one of the highest. Also, one of the lowest states for UFO reporting, you ready for this, is Nevada.
Yeah, I'm aware of that. Weird, huh?
Maybe because it's owned mostly by the government.
Well, maybe people are used to seeing it because, I would see, when I was going, every time I went to see art, we'd be cruising and I see, especially anywhere from Reno all the way to Las Vegas, you see all these weird jets flying every which way. And all these aircraft that you never see anywhere else. It was kind of spooky.
Yeah, well, James, I think you actually hit on it because when I did, research for UFOs over Nevada, usually there's only a few cities in Nevada. There was really no place to get accounts from, and probably a good portion of the sightings in there were just people around the periphery of Area 51 seeing stuff coming in and out of there. So I think that's exactly why.
Well, yeah, what do you got? Reno, Las Vegas, you got Sparks, which is really small. You got Carson City, which, had a lot of reports. Reno didn't have as much as Las Vegas, but then there was a couple other little areas, and that was pretty much it. It was it makes sense. All the military bases there, wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's exactly why. But going back to schoolyard encounters, oh gosh, can I talk about this?
Yeah, please.
Oh man. I've written a number of books on UFOs. Gosh, 14, 15, I've written like 24 books at this point. And this one got to me for whatever reason. It just shocked me. I'd heard about the Rua, Zimbabwe case. That occurred in 1994. Some 62 children saw a UFO land right next to the school. A smaller group saw ETs come out, and they actually conversed with some of the children. It should come as no surprise what the message was. It was basically stop chopping down the forests. One girl was told because it's destroying our planet, that all of humanity could die if we don't stop polluting, and this sort of thing. One lady was told, one student, we have become far too technological. There's a good way to use technology and a bad way, and we could do much better. So these were all the messages that these children were kind of receiving. And it's a very well-known case. And there's a few other well-known cases. In 1966, in Westall High School in Melbourne, Australia, had an incredible UFO incident where some 200, 300 students watched a number of objects hover over the school. One of these things actually landed. Planes showed up and started to circle around these objects. A bunch of the children hopped the fence and ran up to the landed UFO. They saw there was landing traces, a whole big deal. The Army shows up, the press shows up, the police show up. The headmaster calls a special assembly and tells everyone, you didn't see anything. Enacted an immediate cover-up, a huge event. It's Australia's most famous and most widely viewed UFO event. And right at a school. This thing landed right next to a school in front of children. So I'm thinking, okay, is this a thing? And I started to look into it. And it was only 1 year later in Opelika, Florida, Crestview Elementary School had the exact same thing happen. Literally, this UFO lands right next to the school. Military shows up, closes the school down, sends the kids home. UFOs are still in the area at this time. So it was a huge event, and it was also pretty effectively covered up. 1 or 2 articles about each of these cases, but nobody talked about it. Another very well-known case in Broadhaven, Wales, back in 1977. So I started looking into this because I had a couple cases myself here in L.A. And I thought something's going on, and I got a real shock. Over 100 cases, starting in about 1950, all the way up to the present day, at least one or two per year. It's all across the planet: United States, Canada, South America, France, England. I mean, you name it. Africa, Australia, and it's still going on.
But how come we don't hear it on the main news? I mean, we just don't hear about this stuff. That is what is it? Is it being censored that strong?
It absolutely is. I know one case where this guy was at Ocean Knoll School in Encinitas, California. His daughter saw a UFO. All the students on the playground saw it. The teachers saw it. There was a giant window in this UFO, and they could see humanoids. They saw this thing twice. First as it landed down in the canyon next to the school, and then came up again. And the father of one of the children did everything he could to publicize this case, and no one was interested. The teachers wouldn't talk. Most of the students didn't want to talk. He called the police. The police were not interested and didn't want to hear it. He called the news, and they're like, no, we don't do UFO stories. So this is the sort of thing I think is happening. A lot of these cases do actually get some coverage. It's not at all unusual. What I found about schoolyard cases is they're fundamentally different than your average sighting. And by that, I mean the average sighting is a lighted object high in the sky, darting by. Maybe it hovers for a second, turns a few loop-to-loops, and moves off. But it's brief and pretty distant. With schoolyard cases, as a rule, firstly, they occur during the day, which is very unusual. Secondly, they are very low-level sightings. We're talking, 1,000 feet would be high. Usually 500 feet, I would say, 300. In some cases, 200 or landing. 30% of these cases involve landings. Half of the cases involve elementary schools, but also involve middle schools, high schools, and colleges. Another fundamental difference that is very different from your normal encounter is these are widely viewed. And the primary witnesses are children. Not only children, though, teachers in at least half the cases. But the average number of witnesses to a schoolyard sighting is 30, 40, 50, 100. There's one case involving, actually 3 or 4 cases involving 400 people. So these are really major encounters that do cause waves of publicity occasionally, and certainly cause government interest as well. Men in Black type of thing.
Why are they doing it to young kids for? Is it because they want the young people to realize that there is UFOs, aliens, and trying to make them comfortable?
Yes, I mean, that's pure speculation, but that's exactly what I think is going on here, just based on how the UFOs are behaving. Because in most cases, we don't see humanoids. 70% don't involve humanoids. These things are just kind of hovering there at a very low level for a good period of time, not a brief amount, which is another fundamental difference. These things are clearly showing off. There's no doubt about it. In the Ocean Knoll case I mentioned, this thing not only landed next to the school, it came up and it circled around the school. Another good example of why we know this isn't a coincidence would be the Beverly High School case.
Uh-huh.
This object was seen, there was actually 3 objects, hovering over Beverly High School, seen by a group of 10 people and police officers. And 1 minute, Air Force jets came and chased it away. And 3 minutes later, this thing targeted Gordon College, just a few miles away, came swooping down over the oval there, the quad, and scared the living daylights out of a small group of students there. So that can't be a coincidence.
Doesn't sound like it.
Right? And it's just case after case. It's like, here's this amazing case from New Zealand. This one occurred around 1977, I believe it was. And just crazy. This is a high school, multiple grades. Actually, I have to check on that. It may have been an elementary school, but at either rate, there was 400 students out there, and 2 teachers, suddenly the teachers notice that none of the students are playing. They're all just staring at the sky.